Mars has been called the Death Planet, with good reason. It has been a spacecraft graveyard. More than half of the missions sent here have failed. NASA's success rate is better than other nations. But in 1999, the space agency's Jet Propulsion Laboratory experienced 4 unexpected and painful public losses when an orbiter, a lander, and 2 microprobes upon arriving were never heard from again. As if to taunt its victories, Mars dared that it be challenged again in 2003, a time the red planet would be the nearest to Earth that it had been in 60,000 years. The last time these 2 planets were this close, Neanderthals roamed the Earth. Wanting to regain its confidence, JPL took up the Martian dare, and then doubled down by agreeing to build and land on Mars not 1, but 2 rovers. Something never before attempted.
Expected parachute deploy in 5 seconds.
This is the triumphant story of spirit and opportunity. 2 rovers that survived the ordeal of landing on Mars.
1, mark.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 green board, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, engine start, and liftoff of the Delta II rocket carrying the Spirit from Earth to planet Mars.
Load relief kick rate is in, vehicles responding. We're approaching Mach 1. And there we go. We've exceeded the supersonic speed, and the engine positions look good.
Just watching it get up and off the pad and shoot off into the sky is a fantastic feeling.
Onboard video system working perfectly, sending back an immaculate image. We're now passing an altitude of 4 nautical miles.
It brings so much closure to what you've been doing that you have to be happy about that.
Just coming up on 2,000 miles per hour. Passing T plus 60 seconds, our solid motors have burned out.
But until you see the launch vehicle separate and spin down.
Like a nice crisp jettison from the fairing.
And turn on the star scanners and exercise its propulsion system. Find out where the temperatures are going to level out. Understanding whether the solar panels are generating the power they're supposed to be. Until you see all that kind of settle in, it was hard for me to relax.
Now we're looking at a height of average of 90.0 nautical miles. Extremely close to our nominal predicted orbit. Hey, we've entered a coast phase of the mission.
The journeys to Mars for Spirit and Opportunity would take 7 months, crossing a distance of some 300 million miles. This cruise portion of a planetary mission can be a relatively quiet time, but not for these 2 spacecraft.
While we are acquiring global image, receiving the PDF full packet box.
So just in the last hours, we haven't moved very much.
A lot of people think cruise is easy because we're just cruising along. You know, there was this animation of the Mir spacecraft, and you saw it launch, and you saw the excitement of the different stages coming off. And then it starts going on its way to Mars and sails off into the sunset. And then it says 7 months later. Well, those 7 months, that's really what we're concerned with. We have to work hard.
Currently Mach 16.6, altitude 30.
While navigators plotted trajectories, the flight team practiced the complex landing sequences that are called EDL, short for entry, descent, and landing, but also known as 6 minutes of terror. EDL is the most complicated and dangerous part of any mission trying to reach the Martian surface. In a matter of minutes, multiple spacecraft transformations have to take place. It begins with separating from the cruise stage. Next, the rover, enclosed in a capsule, hits the atmosphere at 12,000 miles per hour. 4 minutes later, the speed has been reduced to 1,000 miles per hour, slow enough for a supersonic parachute to deploy without shredding. Then the heat shield jettisons, and the lander begins rappelling down a metal tape and a rope bridle. Meanwhile, a computer is calculating information about motion and altitude. Only seconds remain before the airbags inflate, the rockets fire, the metal tape and bridle rope are cut, and the lander free falls to the surface. The first bounce could be as high as a 4-story building, followed by more bounces that could go on for half a mile before the lander, with the rover tightly wrapped inside, comes to a rest. Hopefully, in one piece. The 6 minutes of EDL terror is still months away. Part of this time is used for training, what engineers call operational readiness tests.
Lucky peanuts.
The tests are meant to be as realistic as possible, including the JPL tradition of munching on peanuts for good luck. But this test is not going according to plan.
Flight, this is suspect. The CDS should not be listening at this time. We have our system set up that it's not sending data.
A processor fatal fault.
Unknown to the team, mission planners have inserted unanticipated technical gremlins into the drill to see how the team will react. The results of early rehearsals were closer to 6 minutes of errors than terror.
Do we know when the fail occurred to see whether this is enough time to recover Celestial?
It occurred sometime after we got the last packet, because it would have shown up as a tone in tone 2.
2 negative dips in 1.
We actually had 3 or 4 simulations where we would sit in the mission control room and we would pretend like the real thing was happening. It was a good thing we did, because the first time we tried this, it was a sheer disaster.
There's actually a small chance we did actually fail between now, but that test artifact now.
We are now about 26 minutes from entry. Velocity 5,250 meters per second.
Wayne Lee managed the rover's entry, descent, and landing system that is responsible for getting the rovers down on the ground. During the actual landings, he will be in a different kind of hot seat, as the voice of mission control.
Now, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark, we now have cruise stage jettison.
I kind of said to myself, on that day, I have no control over it.
Much of the information Lee will be calling out will come from Polly Estabrook.
EDLCOM, we are still receiving acceleration tone number 1.
Estabrook's job is to interpret 36 radio frequencies being transmitted back to Earth during EDL. These tones will indicate critical engineering events the spacecraft is supposed to perform.
If anything went wrong with the mission, telecom was going to tell the answer. I don't see the Doppler rate at a frequency. I went to work thinking, I don't know, how did I get into this situation? My fear was, if something bad happens, I should be able to say from the signature of the signal what has happened.
Mark, at this time, the parachute should have deployed under the nominal trajectory.
I was very nervous.
At this time, it is expected, based on the pre-entry predicts, the vehicle should be on the ground. We are waiting for telecom confirmation that has happened.
EDLCOM, we are bouncing on the surface.
Another unexpected event, but one all too real, occurred 68 days before the first rover landing. It was the day the sun erupted. It was the third most powerful solar storm ever recorded. When this massive solar flare reached the Earth, communications networks were disrupted. Airlines diverted their routes, Earth-orbiting satellites temporarily went dark, and astronauts aboard the space station sought emergency shelter.
And this huge amount of material, bigger than the sun itself, went flying off of the sun, out towards the planets, out towards Earth, out towards Mars, and out towards our spacecraft.
When the solar flare reached the two spacecraft, their star sensors, essential for navigation, began seeing flashes that they mistook for stars. The two spacecraft were all but blinded by the flare. Fortunately, there was no major damage, and the star sensors eventually came back online. But nature wasn't done with surprises. In December, as the first landing day drew near, dust storms began blowing up on Mars, and that was a cause for alarm. Dust causes the Martian atmosphere to warm and thin. That meant the parachute would move through the atmosphere at a faster speed, resulting in less time for slowing down. To counter this condition, Spirit's parachute was reprogrammed to open 2 seconds earlier in hopes of gaining back lost time. Meanwhile, other team members were continuously running computer simulations of EDL, trying out different parameters to see what might occur.
Yeah, so that's what you're looking for?
Yeah. Much to our surprise, after months and months and months of successful round-the-clock testing, we finally find that there's some failures that are occurring. We said, well, is it fluke? What's going on? What we've discovered is that the software is trying to turn on timers that count down to firing pyrotechnic events. A pyrotechnic event is an event that, say, opens up the parachute or inflates the airbags or fires the rocket. All those things are controlled by pyrotechnic devices and little timers that the software can control. We're finding that the software wasn't getting around to doing it. And there was a problem between the hardware and software that we did not know about until just 2 days before landing. And in which case we'll have a failure, guaranteed failure. We're pretty nervous about this.
More testing provided no definitive answer, leaving engineers in agony over what to do or not do. With time running out, the decision was made to manually enable the hardware that fires the pyros by sending commands directly to the spacecraft an hour before landing. There was still more bad news coming from Mars. On Christmas Day, Britain's Beagle 2 lander entered the Martian atmosphere and was never heard from again. A few days later, as 2003 was ending, the Japanese Space Agency announced that its Mars mission had failed to go into orbit. Of the fleet that left for Mars that year, only the European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter had so far survived its arrival. And now, it was the rover's turn. On Spirit's landing day, JPL director Charles Elachi was playing host to VIPs scattered in buildings all across the laboratory.
So I was telling a group which are from Hollywood, this is a real thing. We cannot say cut, we cannot say we cannot say this is simulation. This is a real thing. So you are sharing with us exactly how exploration happens. You are going to see frustration, nervousness, excitement, jubilation, depending what we see when we open that door. You are going to see it with us in real time.
Elachi was a native of Lebanon who had earned his PhD at Caltech. His first job at JPL was as a summer student intern. He never worked anywhere else. The landings of Spirit and Opportunity would be a major test for him and for the lab. For the outcome of this night would set JPL's course for years to come.
We were coming from a very tough time, and it was a nervous time. And I knew what happened for Spirit is going to shape the future of JPL. Either people are going to say, if it failed, and here they crash another rover, I mean, that would have been decimating for JPL. And I knew if it's successful, people will say, wow, these guys came from that huge adversity and look what they have done. The tension was very high, personally and in the room.
There was another reason that made this an anxious moment. A year before, the space shuttle Columbia had disintegrated during re-entry, killing all 7 crew members. The landing of Spirit was the first major NASA event since that tragedy. The space agency's administrator, Sean O'Keefe, was counting on a win at Mars.
And Sean O'Keefe, who was sitting next to me, this is after Columbia. He kept looking at me and said, Charles, this is going to work, isn't it? It's going to work.
MGS is now on orbit 21,559, and we are ready to receive your EDL data.
Ed Weiler, NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Science, was also at JPL. And he never missed the opportunity to refer to Mars as the death planet.
There have been 34 attempts to go to Mars. 13 have been successes. It's an incredibly difficult place to land. Some have called it the death planet for good reason. It's going to be 6 minutes from hell. It's going to be high anxiety. I mean, we're working on this thing for 3 to 4 years. Success or failure is going to be determined in 6 minutes, 360 seconds.
Hi, Dan Whitcomb from Reuters. I'm just wondering if someone can speak to your general level of confidence or anxiety at this point, 8.5 hours out after this point in time.
You know, we've talked a lot about how we're sending a very complicated system into a perhaps unknown environment at incredible speeds. And so you may wonder why many of us here are sitting here smiling, as Pete pointed out yesterday. And actually, you know, I mean, right now, for some strange reason, I feel calm, you know, I feel ready. And I can only conclude that's because I don't have a full grasp of the situation. Today's a great day to land on Mars.
Copy that.
You're going through an event like that where everything that you worked for so many years is on the line. I mean, we had no control. We were spectators, just like the rest of the world.
Flight sequence powered on the airbag gas generator heaters. These gas generators are the solid rockets used to inflate the airbags near the surface of Mars. Flight telecom. Go telecom. I think we see indications of the turn. Copy that.
I worry that we've missed something. I worry about the thing not yet found. If it turns out that you've done something stupid, there's no forgiveness. There are a lot of poker chips on the table here. They're professional, they're personal, they're institutional.
Okay, all stations, we're going to go ahead and begin the poll at this time.
There's national poker chips. We cannot ignore where this happens to be in the history of NASA. All these years, this whole period of time to get to this moment will now be resolved.
One item that we are tracking now very carefully is the rate of change of the gas generator temperature. It is currently creeping at a rate that would be at the maximum temperature.
Copy that.
This report about the gas generator is unexpected. If the temperature continues rising, the airbags might overinflate or not fully inflate.
This is Adam.
It's Rob. You heard that about the gas generators? Could you, they're running a little hot right now.
Rob Manning immediately seeks out Adam Stelzner, who is monitoring the landing with other members of the flight team in another building at JPL.
I'm trying to comb through it and finding it right now.
Stelzner knows the details of the airbags, literally inside and out.
Looks like they're going to be warmer than their flight level by about 5 degrees after soak back. So you don't have concerns for gas heating up to room temperature?
We fired those at room temperature, plus 20 degrees, without any problem. So I think the assessment, let's give it a green. Yes, can you pass that along, sir?
I will pass it on. Okay, thank you very much.
Approximately 2 minutes, 30 seconds ago, the onboard flight
Based on previous testing done by the EDL team, it appears the rising temperature should not pose a problem for the airbags.
The thermal subsystem and the EDL team, the airbag engineers, have also reported that the airbag gas generator temperatures are not going to be an issue. So that issue has been resolved. Currently, all systems are green for entry. Cruise stage jettison should occur in 2 minutes, 40 seconds.
You will be selected for a promotion because of your accomplishment. I'll take that.
Cruise state separation on my mark. 4, 3, 2, 1.
And flight ace, we have subcarrier idle lock on both 70 meters.
Jettisoning the cruise stage, wow, you know, the cruise stage is gone, and now we're just this ballistic thing entering the atmosphere, and the accelerations that we're getting reported back, wow, you know, we're really 12,000 miles an hour going into the atmosphere.
Flight.
Go EDL.
We see Cartone 1 and Cartone 2.
In every key activity that was going on, we got these signals that they were actually going right.
All systems are go for entry, descent, and landing. And on behalf of the entry, descent, and landing team, it's been a pleasure having you guys on board. Best wishes for a successful science mission. At this time, we'd like to invite you to sit back and enjoy the landing.
Place your tray tables in an upright launch position.
We have just passed 1 minute to atmospheric entry, current altitude 121 miles, current velocity 12,084 miles per hour.
Flight detector flight tone 5, acceleration tone number 5, we're coming back down again.
Copy that. Expected parachute deploy in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, mark.
There it is.
At this time, we expect the vehicle has gone subsonic.
Parachute undetected.
Right now.
Go now.
The one-way Doppler has stopped being received, indicating that the PBR is lost lock, which is consistent with parachute deploy having occurred a little bit later than the predicted parachute deploy time.
Copy that.
Heat shield deployed event.
Spacecraft reporting that heat shield has indeed jettisoned.
Lander separation event has been detected.
Reporting lander is separated. We expect that radar will lock on the ground in approximately 5 seconds from now. We are near our terminal velocity.
We have resolution 17. That is confirmation of radar in lock.
Spacecraft reporting that the radar is in lock and we have a good solution on the ground.
Radar is working.
Expected retro rocket ignition on my mark. At this point in time, we should be on the ground. We are now roughly 10 seconds from the latest expected landing time. There is a dispersion landing time of plus or minus 30 seconds. So roughly any signal that we receive from now indicates the vehicle would be alive, on the ground, and bouncing. Stand by. Still awaiting signal that we are on the ground.
We got 6 signs of bouncing on the surface.
Signal indicates we are bouncing on the surface of Mars. This is a very good sign.
Hang on, everybody. Please be quiet.
Stand by.
We don't see a signal at the moment. No signal at the moment.
We saw an intermittent signal that indicated we were bouncing. However, we currently do not have signal from the spacecraft. Remember that bouncing and rolling is an event that it could occur for another 10 minutes. The spacecraft has to survive all the bounces or landing be a success. this time we're approximately 10 minutes after landing. The vehicle should have rolled to a stop by now. The Deep Space Network stations at Goldstone and Canberra are still searching for the signal. The fact that a tone has not yet been received is not necessarily a cause for alarm, as during the bouncing and rolling event, it is extremely difficult to send signals back to Earth.
Look at that. It's stuff we had before. No, 3,900.
Brad ignition was at 3911.
All right, so it's like we got...
That was absolute agony. And in fact, I was getting quite angry and frustrated with myself because I started thinking that maybe this thing had failed. And that maybe all this work was just a waste.
The Deep Space Network stations at Goldstone and Canberra are still searching for the signal.
We see it, Holly, we see it, we see it.
We see it. There it is. Goldstone has the carrier signal in-lock from the rover. Electronic tone sent from the rover indicates that the rover has landed base pedal down, which means right side up. The airbags are still inflated, however.
The news that the rover has landed base pedal down tops a string of successful events for Spirit. Now safe on the ground, the spacecraft is programmed to automatically execute a series of deployment events.
I've got your instruments to Mars, guy. Now the rest of it's up to you. Yeah, go do that. They're probably going crazy.
There's time now to breathe again and to engage in some reflection before Spirit's signals can again be heard.
I woke up this morning and I said to myself, when I wake up tomorrow on Sunday, the world will be different. And it really, really is. It's completely different. This is a tremendous day. And we've got many more steps to go before this mission is completely over, but we've retired an awful lot of risk with this landing. And we've got a good system, and we're alive on the surface, and that gives us real good hope, a harbinger of things to come, that we're going to be very, very successful here. I want to hand it over to a guy that's been on both the highs and the lows of this kind of business, and let him explain his feelings to you.
Thanks, Pete. I really, really like doing it when it works like this. About 7 years ago, I sat up on this stage with my friend here and talked about a similar set of experiences to what we've been through tonight, and it was a great experience. I think we were all young. I had a lot more hair then than I do now, but we didn't know what we couldn't do, and so we achieved a great thing. And in doing so, we learned what the highs of exploration are like. Well, 4 years ago, I think a lot of you saw me sitting up here sort of at the depths of exploration, or the depths of what it takes to make this happen. We're in this business of exploration for obviously moments like this. So, you know, I think that that's certainly what keeps me going and what makes this really a worthwhile endeavor.
If you were watching NASA TV earlier for Spirit's landing, you probably noticed we now have a bit of a change of scenery. Once the rover has landed on the surface of Mars, the Operation Mission Control switches over to the Surface Mission Support Area. This is the Surface MSA. And here is where the operation will stay, hopefully for the next 90 sols, or 90 Martian days. With me right now is John Callis. He is the mission science chief. Pretty good entry, descent, and landing earlier tonight.
Fantastic, Ethan, fantastic. We were safely on the surface of Mars. We had perfect targeting going in, and then the sequence of events as we went through this complicated and dangerous descent to the surface went right on plan.
Oh! And we hear something.
Something exciting.
Sounds announced to us
Oh, wow.
that
Oh, wow.
we're getting information.
We're getting pictures from Mars.
The really exciting news is that if we have this pass with Odyssey, it means everything has gone perfectly on the surface. Even if we get one bit of data from Odyssey, it means all the critical deployments happen just as we had hoped they would. The rover is safe, it is healthy, and it's doing everything as we planned. Because of the sounds of the applause in the background, I think we're going to get very good news very shortly.
Welcome to Mars, Mr. Finelli.
And if we're lucky, we might have a postcard from Mars tonight.
Salt, this is Flight. Do you have real-time telemetry yet?
No, I didn't get it yet. I do see pre-landed step nominal mode.
You have images. Coming down.
Wow! We got the first pictures from the surface of Mars. Look at that. Wow! We are on Mars.
That's looking down on our vehicle.
We're going to egress and then we're going to drive.
It's all good.
I mean, because
Well, we get the blind spot that we can't see anything under the solar rays. We don't actually know what's there.
Right, yeah, I saw that it was in this region.
Okay, so you've seen that. So
Right. So I just want to make sure you guys had the heading so that you can start figuring out where in there.
Yeah, right now the matching of features actually puts us south of that.
It wasn't long before eager scientists began searching for exactly where the rover had landed and what nearby might be worth
I
exploring.
think there's going to be a lot of push from the geology team.
Yeah, they go that way. Absolutely.
And then the thing about the site is it's so flat and there's so few rocks.
Yeah.
We ought to be thinking about whether we could get to something that was just completely distinctly different. I mean, that stuff's poking up through. Man, that's different.
The initial images from Spirit showed a landscape lacking large rocks. That was good news for being able to maneuver. There would be no major obstacles to avoid. But even at first glance, these small rocks seemed all of a similar type.
It may be that there's not a huge variety of rocks, but that's all subject.
That observation would turn out to be true. The rocks were mostly made out of volcanic lava.
This is where you all get to wear these lovely looking glasses. Generally, you want to use...
To find rocks with a richer geological story to tell, Spirit would have to make good use of its wheels once it was actually on the surface. For the moment, the rover was still tightly tied down, sitting atop its lander and airbags. To reach the surface, Spirit would first have to cut 126 cables, fastening it to the lander, stand up, stretch out, and roll off. But images showed that the forward egress route was partially blocked by airbags.
Engineering cameras. Has cam and nav cam help? The rocker, this is the forward rocker, aft rocker.
As the operations team worked on freeing the rover, and scientists mulled over which rocks to inspect, the entry, descent, and landing team pored over Spirit's telemetry to reconstruct just how safe or dangerous the landing had been.
And we end just above.
Spirit's parachute had opened a mile lower than expected, The metal tape and rope bridle that lowered the rover away from its back shell had taken twice as long to deploy, 12 seconds instead of 6.
So this is obviously something that'll have to be investigated to determine what has happened here. This is a mechanical issue that has to be resolved to make sure that we don't break it the next time around. And we've got a real mystery to solve.
There had also been 2 wind gusts. The second one occurred at the worst possible moment, tilting the lander just before the retro rockets fired. Had not additional rockets been added to right the system, the rover would have hit the surface at more than 50 miles an hour, the upper limit of the rover's ability to survive a hard landing. Even then, Spirit hit the ground hard and bounced at least 28 times before coming to a full stop.
Cut to the chase and tell you what it is right away. I'm pretty confident that this dot here is the heat shield. Wow. And then Jay figured out that this is the parachute shadow.
The second landing site's higher elevation and the ongoing global dust storm raised the worry that the lander would run out of time between the parachute opening and touchdown. To buy time required deploying the parachute higher and at a faster speed, which meant the dynamic pressure on the chute would be higher, and that had its own risk. If stressed beyond the tested limits of dynamic pressure, the parachute might shred to pieces.
Well, the fact that it works so beautifully and crisply at 725 is a signal that it will work at 750, because we believe that the parachute would be explaining to us at 725 that it was on the edge. Okay, and there seems to be another group that says it worked at 725, so don't change it, fly it at 725.
Both equally valid opinions. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let me.
Of course, Pete's more valid than both.
Okay. The elephant in the room in this is the parachute deployment pressure. We're still not comfortable with the atmosphere because it's moved quite a bit from where it was for 2 years in our baseline model. What is the size of the residual threats, and how far are you willing to use the good parachute deployments to buy yourself insurance against those residual threats? Which takes us, as appropriate segue, into the descent rate limiter discussion.
Right. the only thing.
Out of these discussions came the decision to open Opportunity's parachute 4,500 feet higher, enough to gain a few extra seconds without, they believed, adding undue risk to the parachute. Meanwhile, the surface operations team was working to get Spirit onto the ground. Having traveled 300 million miles, airbags and 3 feet of elevation were still in the rover's way. And as engineers knew all too well from testing, those last 3 feet could end in catastrophe.
It's okay. It's okay.
That's 517, 120 degree turn of place, minus 30 centimeter backup.
That was particularly frustrating to me. I was looking at those airbags in front of us and trying to figure out which one was which, so if we tried to pull them in some more, we could pull the right one in and do what we wanted to do. And in this case, it was involving assessing which of our paths were the best path, assessing the deck heights. So it was establishing a whole plan that said, how are we going to get from this turn position to on the soil? We've done all this wonderful stuff, EDL, 6 minutes of terror, and if I was wrong, if I made a mistake, all of these other efforts before me are going to be for naught.
These full-scale model tests indicated that the best option was to have the rover turn and exit off the lander to the side. It wasn't ideal, and it caused a delay in the planned schedule.
0050 decimal alpha decimal 00.
But on the 12th sol, the command to roll onto the surface was beamed up as an anxious team held their breath and awaited news from Mars.
Flight Ace. Go ahead, Ace. Flight I have Alpha Alpha Charlie Tango underscore Echo 0050 decimal alpha decimal 00 in the queue.
We have a tilt high water of around 30 degrees. That's an indication we probably went down the ramp.
Copy that.
It's just this incredible feeling of relief.
Sounds like it was a nice trip. All we need now are the pictures.
You know, you're incredibly happy, you know, for a moment, and you're just incredibly relieved, like all this pressure's been lifted off your shoulder for a little while.
I'm back in the saddle again. Out where a friend is a friend.
Having 6 wheels in the Martian dirt topped off a series of high-profile events that had kept JPL and NASA in the news. One day earlier, Vice President Richard Cheney had visited and addressed the lab. Later that same day in Washington, President George W. Bush had used the good news of Spirit to announce his administration's vision for space exploration, a plan that called for sending astronauts back to the moon. By then, Bush had already spoken directly with the JPL team to personally thank them for giving the nation a proud space achievement.
So important, and so this came obviously at a fortuitous time. This mission will really help me explain to the American people why what we're doing is so important.
And Mr. President, you are more than welcome also to come and visit us here in the mission operation area.
Well, I appreciate we can sit around and kick around a few ideas on quantum physics.
And string theory. And Mr. President, the lady in charge of the mission operation said she would love to let you drive that rover, and we really mean it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'd just like to do it here on Earth.
Back in the saddle again.
Now on the ground, the science mission began in earnest. Spirit stretched out its robotic arm to inspect the Martian soil, and in doing so, took the first microscopic image of the surface of another planet. Then the rover traveled 6 feet to its first target. There, on Spirit's 18th sol, Spirit went silent.
We would want to be able to get this in and completed before the prep time for the 11 a.m. call.
So we've deployed the arm, and I'm flight director. And we've got the arm ready to abrade the rock that we're sitting in front of. But then we lose the signal.
The way we left it yesterday afternoon, we did not receive our 4th DTE, and we then looked for our Odyssey overflight and did not receive any data. It was believed that the MER vehicle did not attempt any communication with the Odyssey orbiter. There was no...
Oh gosh, well, what happened? Was it the station that didn't send it properly? Did I not send it at the right rate? So you start walking through that. The mission manager is there to help you walk through those events. What are we going to do? Well, let's just try to send another beep and see if it'll communicate back to us.
Yes, sir. I'm not seeing anything from our displays. You're not seeing any signal at this time?
So negative.
Copy that, 4-3. Let's keep on looking.
We now know that we have had a very serious anomaly on the vehicle, and our ability to determine exactly what has happened has been limited by our inability to receive telemetry from the vehicle. There is no one single fault that explains all the observables that we know of at the present time that we can conceive. We do not know to what extent we can restore functionality to the system because we don't know what's broke. As you know, we do have another spacecraft coming in. We are now 2 days out from the Opportunity entry, descent, and landing.
On Sol 19, Spirit managed to send out a single beep, sharing that she was still alive, but clearly not well.
Copy flight, and what's the bit rate on this? 31.25 still?
So we had the anomaly, the rover, we don't know the state of the rover. We did have a communication session which was supposed to happen in the middle of the night while the rover was asleep.
And so what we're going to do is send a beep on the low gain antenna with the same command that we sent the beeps yesterday and see if we are still commandable at 31.25.
Unfortunately, the data from that session is just garbage. It's unintelligible. Then the rover wouldn't go to sleep and it wouldn't shut down. So then it was just another problem. It became problem after problem in terms of what we thought were the ways to solve it.
Was the problem related to Spirit's hardware or its software, or both? Glenn Reeves, the architect of the software, began to think he knew the answer.
It's a software problem, and I don't like software problems because software is my world.
Although what Spirit was communicating was mere gibberish, Reeves knew that even gibberish can convey a message.
Now the evidence is starting to point to the fact that maybe we're just resetting. We understand the behavior of the system. If it's in a mode where it has a significant error like that, one of the ways to clear that error in many situations is to go through a reset, bring the software up brand new, and effectively start again.
That was easier said than done, for Spirit's computer appeared to be in a manic state of constant rebooting, refusing to rest or sleep, resulting in a major drain on the rover's batteries.
We now think that the system has never shut down for 2 days. And are we going to have enough battery, or are we effectively going to brown out?
Flight telecom. Radio science reports they lost signal, so it could be that something ended or got terminated.
Flight software, do you have anything to report?
No.
I believe that's a no.
And when you're dealing with a spacecraft that's 200 million miles away, every single moment you have where you interact with it is precious. You cannot waste any of those. You're worried that maybe these are the last couple times that you're going to talk to it, and you want to capitalize on everything you can possibly do.
A plan emerges to send up new boot commands that will bypass Spirit's normal startup system and instead use its read-only memory. But to work, the new command has to be inserted during a narrow window of time before yet another automatic reboot. When the new command goes up on the third sol of the crisis, the second rover, Opportunity, is just hours away from its own rendezvous with Mars. On everyone's minds is the possibility that on this day, the team may go from having 2 rovers to none.
Flight Ace.
Go ahead.
Flight station reported that they're seeing signal at 143536 on all the down
and
channels.
then response so that you know whatever you say.
Copy that, 63 at 1438 0.
Oh, we've got EHA.
Like a well-oiled machine, isn't it?
As the sun rises over Pasadena, the crisis ends. There is still work to be done to restore Spirit to a healthy state, but that will come in the days ahead. For later today, following the setting of the sun, it will be Opportunity's turn to encounter Mars.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to live coverage of Opportunity's landing on Mars from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. Spirit is definitely a hard act to follow, but Opportunity is certainly going to try.
Spirit's dramatic arrival at Mars and its software crisis had made for a steady drumbeat of headline news all across the globe.
Hello.
Now, the hottest ticket in town was to be at JPL for the landing of opportunity.
And good evening from the flight deck of the Opportunity. Our current speed is 11,402 miles per hour, which is fast enough to traverse a distance equal to the continental United States in less than 12 minutes. About 15 minutes ago,
Wayne Lee was again providing play-by-play commentary, dressed in the same shirt, in hopes of it bringing more good luck.
5 minutes ago, right over Valles Marineris. Weather today at the landing site is expected to be fairly mild, with temperatures averaging about minus 15 degrees C, and there is no chance of rain today.
Looking back on it, there was actually more pressure the night of the second one. You would think that there would be less pressure because we got one of them to work. But that night of the second landing, I looked up in the viewing gallery and there was the governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, sitting up there. There was former Vice President Al Gore. There was also a whole lot of people from Congress up there thinking, well, the first one worked, let's come out and party for the second. Seeing all those dignitaries up there, I think that in an odd sort of way, it would almost have been more embarrassing to fail the second one just in front of everybody. And I also think that a lot more people around the country tuned in, thinking, oh, okay, well, the first one worked so good, let's watch the second.
Atmospheric entry, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. The vehicle is now hit the top of the Martian atmosphere. We are now at an altitude of 73 miles, moving at a speed of 12,187 miles per hour.
Flight nav.
Go down.
The Doppler indicates that atmospheric deceleration is occurring.
Copy that. We expect parachute deployment approximately 50 seconds from now. Parachute deploy has been detected. Radar solution, Matrix 21.
3,000 feet. The radar has a positive block on the ground. We have a retro rocket firing solution.
That rocket has fired.
We have
getting a bouncing signal. We're seeing it on the LTP.
Long before Opportunity ceased its bouncing, the celebration began, as days of pent-up worry and tension turned to relief and joy. VIPs descended upon Mission Control to congratulate the team, and, of course, to take advantage of this ready-made photo op. JPLers, led by the EDL team, then piled out into the street, intent on storming the post-landing press conference to make their contribution known with a victory lap. One might think this was all anyone could wish for on one single day, with 2 rovers now safe on Mars. But the night was still young, despite the late hour, and the best was still to come.
You're privileged to be in one of the most exciting rooms on Earth at the moment. So don't abuse it.
Following the raucous press conference, the scene at JPL shifted again to the mission operations room.
Thank you for everyone for being very well behaved. It's reasonably quiet in here.
Where do we get the data? Flight thermal? Flight imaging?
Something's going on there,
It felt like the 4th of July, like fireworks going off, picture after picture after picture, just enough time between them for us to simulate what an incredible place this was.
Craters means rocks. Oh my gosh, we got all sorts of stuff at this place.
It's this experience of total awe that you've broken this vast barrier of time and space between us and Mars.
And now would be a good time for our PI's assessment of what we're looking at.
It's the weirdest, most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
We knew going into this that at a fine scale, the texture of radiation.
Though it would take time to realize, Opportunity had scored an interplanetary hole-in-one, bouncing its way into a small crater. And right in front of the rover was everything a geologist could ever hope for. Exposed bedrock, just waiting to tell the story of its ancient past.
I got nothing else to say. I just want to look.
Spirit and Opportunity by now had captured the attention, if not also the hearts, of people all across the globe. The rover's warranty, or expected lifetime, was just 3 months, after which time it was thought that dust collecting on the solar panels would cause their demise. But for these twin machines, Mars proved to be anything but a death planet. Time and again, benevolent Martian dust devils would roll across the rovers, wiping clean their solar panels, giving new life to these two explorers. And explore they did. In combination, they roamed over 30 miles over a combined period of 20 years. During that time, these robotic field geologists accomplished their science goal of determining that Mars was once a warmer, wetter place, a vital step in the quest to determine if Mars had ever, or still does, harbor microbial life. And of course, to the delight of everyone, Spirit and Opportunity transmitted back a stream of images, more than 1/3 of them. In doing so, Mars was transformed from an alien planet to a place we can now feel we know, easily imagining ourselves taking in these vistas from the same vantage. Spirit and Opportunity have changed not just how we think about Mars, but how we view it. And that may be their greatest legacy.